I would like to address these 5 topics in the next 10 minutes. First, the Dutch context. The Netherlands is a small but highly populated, densely populated country, so it's good to know that we have abundant facilities and they're always nearby. We have good quality of care, healthcare systems, welfare systems. So it's good to realize that what we do in the Netherlands to support our veterans is on top of the already existing favorable employability, welfare and healthcare arrangements for all citizens. We have an all-voluntary force since the mid-1990s, about 40,000 service members today. Annually, about 3,000 service members leave the armed forces and about 3,000 will enter the armed forces. Most service members who enter the armed forces are well educated. They have an educational level that makes them successful on the labor market. And most people who leave irregularly do so because the armed forces will not renew their contract and they found employment elsewhere already. It's good to know that we have an up-or-out system in the Netherlands. About at the age of 35, soldiers and corporals are no longer allowed to serve, so they have to leave, and most NCOs and officers will do as well. So those who are allowed to stay in the military until retirement are NCOs and officers. When we speak about veterans in the Netherlands, and that's a definition question, we talk about service members who have been deployed to a war or a peace enforcing or peace keeping mission. We have about 113,000 veterans nowadays. That's an old number you see over there. And 30,000 service members who still serve are veterans as well. So you can be a veteran when you still serve in the armed forces. The supportive measures. Basically, we have 2 supportive measures. The first one being employability support, and the second one being support defined by the Veterans Act. So employability support is for all service members, and the Veterans Act on top of that provides healthcare arrangements and financial and tangible support for veterans, but importantly also measures to enhance appreciation and recognition towards veterans, but also measures to stimulate those feelings within the general public, because as Dr. Castro already mentioned, when you transition into a society which is favorable towards you, who recognizes your contributions and your abilities, skills, knowledge, then it makes transition much easier. And that's what we do also. Well, employability support aims at enhancing one's educational level, one level up. As mentioned already, most service members who enter the military have a vocational training already that makes them successful on the labor market, but because they served, we try to enhance their chances by enhancing their educational level. Well, you see some measures we take, some support that's given, career counselors helping help service members making the right decisions. They have a plan, so they know what they're doing, and they take stock of what they know already by filling out an e-portfolio, and that makes them also aware what's lacking to be successful when they transition out. Most military trainings that all service members are going through are also recognized partly by as a civilian kind of education, so that makes it worthwhile to go to those trainings. So there are all kinds of employability support measures for all kinds of service members. For those who are wounded, injured or sick and not able to work for more than 1 year, there's a reintegration institute in our armed forces. It aims to get people back to work. First choice is their own function and, well, as a last resort, a function outside the MOD. There are some numbers as well, 2017 results. Since 2012, we have a Veterans Act and a Veterans Decree since 2014. As mentioned earlier, it's basically the underpinning of the support for veterans, trying to give them appreciation and recognition for what they did to serve our kingdom, but also to enhance those feelings within society. And there's also healthcare support for those who need it, and tangible support for those who need it as well. And that's just based on the Veterans Act. Now, support for veterans is delivered by several organizations, and basically there are 5 large organizations involved in delivering the support for veterans, but I will only cover 3 because time runs out. First of all, Ministry of Defense. Ministry of Defense is responsible for making policy and is responsible for policy execution, but it does not execute most of its policy itself. Of course, it cares for its veterans who are in service, but for those veterans who are transitioned out of the armed forces, there are other partners who deliver services for the MOD. As you can see, we have a small budget as compared to other countries. And most of the budget is related to all kinds of compensations and pensions. The Veterans Institute is a support organization that provides services to veterans, predominantly services, but a new part of our institute is the Veterans Office. It's a 24/7 accessible desk for those who need support and help. They can contact us, and when they have deployment-related needs, we will refer them to our healthcare system. That will be on the next slide. But most of our services are support services, for example, information, a human interest magazine, so they can keep in contact with what happens with the military, etc., and in the veteran population as a whole. And one aspect which is nice to mention is we also have a communication program in which veterans tell their stories in classrooms, and yearly we reach about 30 to 40,000 new school children every year, so they know what it's like to be, or they are told what it's like to be deployed as a veteran and what it means to serve your country. And by that we hope to stimulate positive feelings for veterans in society as well. Our healthcare system for veterans is a system of 12 organizations. 3, those are the dark boxes, are military organizations, and the others are civilian organizations. And besides the Veterans Institute, that is predominantly for veterans, and the social work organization that aims at helping uniformed service members, firemen, policemen as well. Those are civilian organizations, so they provide healthcare for civilians, but they have programs for veterans as well. So that's what's different. For example, in the US, they have a Veterans Affairs in which you can have your mental health care, but we have no specialized care for veterans or only aimed at veterans. There are all civil organizations that do healthcare for veterans as well. Some lessons learned. In 2016, the MOD evaluated its veterans policy and how it is delivered. There are numerous lessons learned, but I'll have some on this slide. Basically, systems tend to become complex over time, and that's what happened in the Netherlands as well, as it concerns veterans policy and how it's delivered. We have to define more clearly what support will be given to veterans and their families. Nowadays, sometimes support is given and others think, hey, I might be entitled for that support as well, and there's no clear policy regulation or whatever to support that idea, to give that kind of support. So we have to define what kind of, what the scope of support will be in the near future, and we have to simplify how it's delivered. As you can see, we have only 5 major organizations, but then again, we think that's too complex and we have to make it more simple. What's also important is that how we support veterans was based on how we deployed soldiers years ago. But nowadays, how we deploy soldiers changed, and so the way we support them should be changing as well. And, well, how that will work out for example, our institute, I don't know by now. And we want to make a shift from focusing on what went wrong to prevent things going wrong. So the whole system of care in our MOD makes that shift towards prevention and sustainable health and readiness. The last two, no, the last one is capability, the use of capabilities in society. The other two, well, veterans sometimes think, well, I'm entitled for it, help me, I'll do nothing. And we have to change that mindset and make them responsible for their own transition. And we must support their transition, but they are responsible for their transition as a first person. And we should have, for example, compensation measures that support that idea in the long run and not make them, well, say, addicted to support, which is not good for them in the long run. Some research results to end my presentation. We know that about 1 in 3 veterans have difficulty with transitioning out of the armed forces, and 1 in 6 or 7 still feels not on its place, in in civilian life. And there are numerous reasons for that, but it makes clear that we have a transition problem and we should address that as well. Problems related to deployments. We saw some US and Canadian and UK figures. As a rule of thumb, we say in the Netherlands 80% do well, 20% have problems, and of those 20%, 80% have problems that will be cured or dealt with effectively, and 20%, so overall 4 to 5% have problems that will last because of PTSD or financial problems or whatever. Then how effective is our policy? When we ask veterans, do you feel appreciated? And we have 4 actors, the MOD, the media, society, and people in the vicinity. We see that overall they are somewhat lukewarm. Most don't feel appreciated, nor feel a lack of appreciation, but there's work to do to make them feel more appreciated. And when we ask veterans if they're satisfied with the veterans policy as a whole, and we have several aspects of our veterans policy, then overall you see that most veterans are satisfied, and the number of veterans who are dissatisfied is very, very small. So overall, we think we do a very good job in the Netherlands, but it can be better, and that's what we're aiming for. And then public opinion. When we ask public, do you support missions, then overall support for missions is modest, but they support veterans, and they think they need, if they need care, they should be supported and they should be recognized. But there are some caveats as well, because 2 out of 5 don't really know who are a veteran. And when asked, who do you think is a veteran, most people think that those who served are a veteran. But in the Netherlands, that's not the case. So we have a problem of making a good distinction to the public who is a veteran and who is not. And most people do not really act towards veterans. They say they're proud, or they appreciate them, but they don't really do something to show their appreciation. And that's something that's interesting for us. How can we act people to show their appreciation? Well, that was a bird's eye view of the Dutch veterans policy. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me, because there's much more to say, but time prevents me to say anything more. Thank you.